All right, I think it's time to get started. Welcome, everyone. My name's Ian Scared. I'm the head of marketing from FlowFuse. So welcome to our monthly webinar. We're really excited about this webinar. The interest has been off the charts here. So I think it's going to be a great topic. We're going to be talking about Dashboard 2.0, and Joe Pavitt is here to lead us through it. Joe, can you just go to the next slide? Just want to talk about some logistics. I always encourage people to introduce themselves in the chat. We're a community here, so please feel free to say who you are and where you join us from. We always get lots of questions about is the session going to be recorded? Yes, it will be recorded. Everyone will receive an email with a link to the recording. It usually takes about 24 hours for us to get the recording posted on YouTube, but you will receive an email to that recording. We will have lots of time at the end for a Q&A. We really do recommend that you ask the questions in the Q&A pod at the bottom of the screen. Don't ask a question in the chat. It's just far too hard to keep track of. It's much better if you ask it in the Q&A pod. All right. So without much further ado, Joe, we'll turn it over to you. We're really looking forward to this. Take it over.
Thank you so much, Ian. And hi, everybody. I'm going to do a quick introduction. Hi, I'm Joe from Winchester in the UK, just to kind of support everyone else in the chat, saying where they are and who they are and where they're from. But yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for joining and for taking out the next amount of time to come and listen to me talk about Dashboard 2.0. I just wanted to give a quick background as to who I am. My current role is Head of UX and Design at FlowFuse, responsible for product work, website work, and then also mostly now Dashboard 2, sorry. But I also worth mentioning, I was an early contributor to Dashboard 1, working with the likes of Dave Conway-Jones and Nick O'Leary for the last 8 years or so at IBM and on Node-RED, and then again, early contributor to Dashboard 1. And most importantly for this particular talk, I am currently the lead developer for Dashboard 2. And I've been working on that now for a couple of months and trying to backfill in terms of features from Dashboard 1 up to Dashboard 2, but also trying to work on enhancements and work forward as to what improvements can we be making to dashboarding in Node-RED so that everyone can make amazing data visualizations and user interfaces using Node-RED. And for today, just to give you a quick overview of what we have got planned, give you a quick introduction because I'm appreciative that there's probably a lot of people with different types of backgrounds coming in here. There may be people that are very well versed in Node-RED. There may be people new to Node-RED. There may be people that have got lots of experience with Dashboard 1, lots of experience with Dashboard 2, hopefully. There may be people with none. So I just wanted to level set and understand and make sure everyone was on the same page as to why we're here, why I'm talking, and what then I will go through is an update on where we are in terms of migration of features, give you some interactive demos. I will be building live. Hopefully the demo gods are on my side today. And then after that, we'll talk a little bit more about what's coming soon for Dashboard 2, a couple of announcements regarding Dashboard 2, and then the last 15 minutes or so will be a Q&A session. And as Ian mentioned, please, any questions you do have, feel free to ask them throughout the webinar, but please do use the Q&A chat rather than the actual webinar chat for within Zoom. So without further ado, getting a level set on Dashboard 1. So Node-RED Dashboard has been around for about 8 years. It's very, very popular in the community. But Dave Conway-Jones, who is the main maintainer for that, has officially said that the project should be considered on life support. And reasons for that are that it is using Angular 1, which is no longer supported. And the idea being that hopefully with Dashboard 2, we can rebuild that from the ground up. We're currently using Vue.js, but the idea is that it would be able to be a bit more dynamic in terms of what it can support and how it can support, such that we can improve that with new features. With Angular 1, we were restricted in terms of what new functionality we can be adding. Why are we doing this? Because Dashboard 1 itself is an incredibly popular add-on for Node-RED. At the peak that I looked at the NPM downloads, we were getting about 42,000 downloads a week. It's a little bit lower now, mostly because there's other dashboarding technologies that have been coming around since Dashboard 1's kind of slightly to decline. But it's something that still remains probably the most popular node, third-party node other than the core nodes for Node-RED. And so it's something that we really want to cherish and want to make sure that we're giving it the support and the attention that it deserves. And within FlowFuse, we are building platforming around Node-RED to run that at scale. And what we are seeing is now a lot of our customers wanting a reliable modern dashboarding solution that they can trust. They're starting to get wary of the fact that Dashboard 1 is on life support, right? So we want to be able to provide as FlowFuse something that our customers can trust, and in the spirit of Node-RED, everything that we're building so far is in the open source domain, right? And so it will be following as per Node-RED Dashboard 1. Node-RED Dashboard 2's core set of nodes will be in open source as well. So what are we trying to achieve with Dashboard 2? I have Rick Bellotta to thank for this particular phrase that he said to me, and it really stuck, and it struck a chord that so I thought I'd steal it for Dashboard 2. Is that the easy things should be easy and the hard things should be possible. And that's really the driving statement behind what we're trying to build with Dashboard 2. As many possible low-code solutions, drop something in and it should just work. If I want to visualize my data, just drop a chart node in, wire my data in, and it should just work. If suddenly you want to be able to build complete custom nodes and everything else on top of that, that should be possible. If you want to have complete custom layouts, that should be possible. And so that's something that we're really trying to work towards. So where we're at right now is our first mission, our kind of smaller mission, is such that it's the Dashboard 1 feature migration. And that's firstly getting the core widgets that are in Dashboard 1, the button, the drop down, the form, and the chart and everything transitioned over to Dashboard 2, and we're doing well. And I'll go into a bit more detail about our progress on that. And something that Dashboard 1 does really, really well is really hit into our mission statement already, which is the balance of ease, but also the ability for customization. And so that's something that we're really trying to strive for and make sure that we support going forward. As of about 2 weeks ago, we announced that we've now got support for third-party widgets as well. So I've been having conversations and calls with the developers of Dashboard 1 third-party widgets like UI SVG, UI Heatmap, UI World Map. They're all really, really popular widgets, and we want to make sure that the ecosystem comes with us, and that when you're using Dashboard 2, if you had dashboard widgets that you were regularly using and regularly relying upon for Dashboard 1, they would follow into Dashboard 2, and we're doing our best where possible to support those. In addition to what we have so far from Dashboard 1, we have also tried to introduce some new shiny things as well, and I'll be showing off some of these in the demos that we will be doing shortly. But the first one that was called for a lot within Dashboard 1 is responsive layouts. Now, the way that we've tackled this in Dashboard 2 is slightly different to Dashboard 1. Dashboard 1 had a very fixed tile-based layout, if you're familiar with it. If you resized it, the tiles would always stay the same size, and they would just then kind of layer themselves underneath. Kind of masonry layout is the technical term. What we've done with Dashboard 2 is we've made layouts configurable. So when you have a concept of a page on Dashboard 2, you can pick which layout it will render with. So we have the fixed layout, which is the same as Dashboard 1. We then have grid layout, which is a bit more like, if you're familiar with it, Bootstrap's column system. So it's 12 fixed columns. I could say my group would be 6 columns wide. So if I resize, it would always be 50% 6/12, or I can make it 3/12 or 2/12, whatever I wanted to. And that makes it way more responsive. And again, I will show some demos on how that scales down to mobile and to tablet and up to your desktop screens as well. Something that I introduced last week is something that I've been really keen to introduce in Dashboard 2, which as a label doesn't really mean a lot, but when I demo it, hopefully you'll understand the value. And what that's allowing us to do is what we call key mapping within a UI chart. In Dashboard 1, you would have some data coming from an API or a sensor. You'd have to do some data manipulation to make it a payload of X and Y, and then inject it into your chart. What we've now got is the ability that you don't have to do that. You can just say my X value is dot value and my Y value is dot temperature in my data set, and it will just go and automatically handle the data conversions for you. And as mentioned, with regards to the rich ecosystem, we're also now trying to introduce the idea for UI template and also supporting a library called Vuetify. So where we want the easy things being easy and the hard things should be possible, if you want a custom feedback slider or a linear progress bar or something like that are kind of common widgets that we don't support natively within its own dedicated node, the Vuetify library is a really, really rich set of UI widgets that we support by default. And again, I will show some of those in action a little bit later on. So that will give you way more customization, way more control over when you're building your own UI within Node-RED. And then finally, another thing that we've introduced is the ability to be having simplified content. So if you want headers with tables and you want a bullet point list of content, you don't have to know HTML and write out HTML anymore. We support Markdown by default. And within that, there is a really common charting library called Mermaid, which it allows you to define and write charts within Markdown. And again, I will be showing some demos of that. But the idea there is it trying to lower the low code nature of dashboards and Node-RED such that it's a smoother introduction. And again, you've also then got more customization over the types of charts, the types of data visualizations that you can do within Dashboard 2. In terms of migration roadmap, I'm going to quickly skip through this and then get on to some demos, but this is a collection of the widgets that we had from Dashboard 1. So far, these are the ones that we have migrated fully over. We've still got some work to go, but I also wanted to call out that some of the ones here in blue, date picker, color picker, and numeric, whilst aren't available as standalone nodes in Dashboard 2, you can actually just use the text input widget and just set type to date or type to color, type to numeric, and that will actually also do the same behavior. So there's still more work to be done in terms of UI gauge, audio, and UI control, but they are very much on our roadmap, and we are working towards getting those finished in the very near future. So as I mentioned, we're going to do some demos. I'm going to switch over to a Node-RED editor in a second, but just to give you a quick idea of what those demos are going to be. First off, I'm going to just show you the UI chart in action, particularly the key mapping functionality that we've been using. From there, I'll then show you that exact dashboard and how it scales down to mobile. Then we'll go on to Markdown and Mermaid, and then finally I'll show you some Vuetify stuff. I'm actually then going to build a custom video player in a UI template node with custom events transporting backwards and forwards as well, all just in Node-RED. Don't have to build any custom nodes and push stuff to the NPM library for that. So in that case, I'm going to come out of the presentation and we're going to jump into a Node-RED editor. I have, just for context, set up just like basic pages and groups on this. But to get started, I am going to do a chart. Again, you'll be familiar if you've used Node Dashboard 1, some of these nodes. I'm going to drop a chart in, and I'm going to add it into my sensor data group that I've created. And I'm also going to make it a little bit taller than just default. This is using the grid layout that we've built now. The new grid layout we have fixed, and notebook is another one I can show later. But the idea of grid layout is it's 12 columns. So my grid is going to take up 6 of those. The maximum it could go is to 12. And then the idea of that chart then being 6, you'll see that will fill out the group. So if I just quickly render that, that chart, I'm going to also give my access to my tabs back, just so it's going to be easier for me to switch backwards and forwards here. So if we make that 6 by 8, deploy that out, we've now got a chart ready to go. Now, what the data we're going to actually render is going to be coming in from a weather API. It's open Meteo. I'm going to just take the, it's not going to let me copy and paste that, is it? That's fine. I'll copy and paste it from elsewhere. So the API that we're going to get is going to get me the last 5 days worth of data based on the longitude and latitude. And then I'm going to actually use a HTTP request node to go and make an API call. So it will have my inject that will trigger off my function. I'm going to actually define all of my API behaviors and so on through a function node, so I can set my latitude, my longitude, the number of days I want my forecast to be, and then this is the API call to go and get that data. I'm not going to go into too much detail on here because I want to focus more on dashboard than fundamentals of Node-RED. In my HTTP request node, I want to return a JSON object the message.url is actually going to be set in from here, so I don't need to set any of that stuff on HTTP request. And then for now, just to show you what I'm actually working with, I'm going to quickly put this into a debug node. And we're going to open up the debug window on the right-hand side, hit play, and we get data corrupted. That's always good. Data there. Why didn't that save? Save parsed object. Try that again. There we go. Data corrupted. That is fun. That is different. All right. Bear with me for a second, because I'm meant to be injecting a whole payload. And so in here, instead of message.payload, let's do message.payload.lat. And we're going to be introducing a string. And we're going to have payload.long. And we're going to have that there. I've got an API key. This is payload.api. And then finally, payload.dt. It's just going to be, whoops. Touch that. Let's try that again. There we go. We've got some data. So the hourly data is what I'm looking at here. So we have an array of time, which is just raw timestamps, and then as a kind of sibling of that, we have the associated temperature at those times, the associated humidities, and the associated surface pressures. Now, in order to chart this, I actually need to kind of merge all this together. So I am going to quickly grab a bit of JavaScript that will do this. Again, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I will skip over what I'm getting. So I'm pulling out the temperature array, I'm pulling out the humidity array, I'm pulling out the pressure array, and then looping over my time, and then just creating a single data object that just merges all of those things together. So I have time, temperature, humidity, and pressure at time that, for example. And then from there, I can now also show you what that looks like. And notice here, I'm just trying to, why is none of my stuff saving? That's very weird. Yeah, so the idea is that I've just got a single data object, time, temperature, humidity, pressure. I haven't had to make it X or Y or any of that kind of stuff. And what I can do is wire this into my chart node, and there's some new features here, properties, that we can utilize, where I can say, actually, here is what my data looks like. So for this instance, it's going to be time on the first one, and let's just for now draw one line of temperature. Series traditionally in dashboard 1 would always be driven by message.topic. We can actually for now just say, well, we're just going to draw temperature on its own. And so let's do done, deploy, and then if I inject that and switch over to my dashboard, I now have temperature data over the last 5 days rendered out. If instead I don't want temperature anymore, I want humidity, for example, I can just do deploy, and now we're rendering humidity instead. If we actually want both of these, let's make this chart a little bit shorter, make it 5, and change that back to temp. And then they will call this one timescale. That's already humidity. Make that 5 tall as well. So then we can inject that same data into both chart nodes. Notice now traditionally in dashboard 1, I would have had to go in and have another modifier that would have updated all of the data associated to it. If we inject that, we're getting a little bit of a funky feedback loop here, because what's happening is the data is already plotted. It's then plotting it again and connecting it up to the existing line, which we don't want to happen. So I can change that label to humidity, just so I can better place myself on the dashboard. And then I can, as per dashboard 1, set a message payload of just an empty array, and wire that to my inject node here, wire that to both charts. So what that's going to happen is when I run this inject, it will send a message payload of blank to both charts, which will clear both charts. then simultaneously it will go and get the new data and then plot the new data. So if I deploy that and now run inject, now I've got clean data every time. And something that I have open in a pull request that I was too scared to merge an hour before this webinar is the ability to, on the series here, I now have an option for JSON, and I could, in theory, write temp like this, humidity, and that will actually then go and plot 2 lines on the same chart from one data source, given the single objects that we're working with. But that's on a PR that I'm hoping to get pushed tomorrow. Like I say, I was a little bit too worried about putting that in an hour before I'm doing a demo to hundreds of people. So in terms of data visualization, we've taken some data from an API, we've cleaned it up, we've put it into a single object, and then we've used UI chart to be able to say, actually, here's my X value, here's my Y value, go and plot that for me. And we've wired that data into 2 different charts, which is really good. And if there's any questions that are popping up, I will answer them at the end if that's okay, just because I want to get through the demos that I have lined up. So the next piece that I wanted to move on to was the responsive layout nature of this. So at the moment, this group is of size 6. So just to remind you in here, if I go into the group itself, that's currently of size width 6, and the whole page itself is width 12. If, for example, I change this to 9, and then the underlying chart themselves, I change to a 9. Then now it's 3/4 of the width. And the reason I just specifically chose 9 just now is because the way that we handle responsive layout is currently by default, it's 12. If I go into DevTools here, you'll notice once I get down to a particular point, which is about 1024 pixels off the top of my head, we change from a column layout of 12 down to a column layout of 9. And even if I go lower and lower and lower, it will always then resize down to whatever I want. So on mobile, it looks much better than it would have on dashboard 1, for example. And even on an iPad, let's show one that's actually got a shell on it. I can put that in both landscape and in portrait, and it's still responsive and looks great. So that's something that we've really been trying to hone in and make sure that the layouts within dashboard 2 are dynamic, are responsive, and can handle a variety of different screen sizes. So let's come out of developer mode there, and we should be putting that into sensor data. So I just realized that's going to be in the wrong group for when I do a demo later, which is fine. And then the next thing I was to move on to is to Markdown and Mermaid. So our new node that we have is here, which is our Markdown node. And for those unfamiliar with Markdown, the idea is that it's essentially a simplified version of HTML. We can add it to our Markdown basics group, just to show you what the default value here looks like if I deploy this. Not quite sure why I'm getting errors, but it does work. I can now see Markdown content goes here. And the hashtag is the standard way of writing H2. If I wanted to put another header, we also have a WYSIWYG editor here. So header 2. I can put in some bold content like so. And then I could also, here is a list of things, list item 1. And again, we'll just see how that renders out. And the idea here is that if you want supporting documentation within your dashboard, or you want supporting content within your dashboard, to explain the things that are going on, the data visualizations that you have working, for example, you can now just do that directly with Markdown rather than having to write HTML templates that might be a little bit more verbose and a little bit more technical. So the default way that Markdown now looks is pretty good. What we've also introduced is the ability to create dynamic Markdown. And the way that we can do dynamic Markdown, sorry, I just gonna get myself a drink there. The way that I'm going to demonstrate dynamic Markdown is with Mermaid charts. And if you're not familiar with Mermaid charts, Mermaid is an open source technology for diagramming and charting. They have a bunch of different diagrams and charts that you can do here. For example, a state diagram, and you just declare this within your Markdown, and the output is something like this. Now, way that I'm going to do that within our demo here is I'm actually going to add a button, which is going to be called a state chart. And I'm going to link that up to a template node, just so that it's easier to read what we're actually injecting. So that's just copying the Markdown across, which we actually support there anyway. And then that Markdown, or the actual contents of our Markdown and our Mermaid, is then going into a Markdown node, where our Markdown node, all we need to do is write in a code block of type Mermaid, and then I'm actually going to inject message.payload into here. So whatever message comes in, we just send it to Mermaid and just say, draw this. And I'm then going to copy, that. And I'm just going to steal another example just to show this in action. So let's just take the class diagram. And deploy that. And if I hit class diagram, we can get a class diagram. If I click state chart, we get a state chart. And that now is kind of dynamic Markdown per se. It's also dynamic Mermaid. And we can actually go even a step further, because in Mermaid, you can also do things like pie charts. So just to show you what they look like in terms of an example, we can now inject let's actually copy another Markdown node here. And we are going to, in our Markdown node, rather than having message payload, I can just put my definition in. And I'm actually going to have message.payload.dogs. Message.payload.cats, message.payload.rats. And then in a function node, and let's have some sliders to drive this. So we're going to have actually just define one. Let's have this as dogs, Markdown basics, that's fine. It's going to go from 0 to 10. I'm going to inject that into there. We're also going to have a change node. So the reason I'm doing it this in particular way is we want to have a single object that defines dogs, cats, and rats. So I'm going to have 3 sliders that all go to then set a flow variable. So we're going to set flow.dogs, for example, to the value message.payload. So when a slider is moved, we then set a global flow.dogs to whatever value. And then in here, we're going to have a single message payload that just merges those things together. So we get flow.dogs, flow cats, flow rats. If they don't exist yet, just make them 0 because that stops it from crashing. And we can just copy that down. I appreciate I'm going very fast here. And there's probably a lot of questions, but I want to more demonstrate the functionality of dashboard rather than go into details on the Node-RED work that I'm doing here. I appreciate there's a lot of it. So if I now go into here and I now start moving my dogs and my cats and my rats, it doesn't work. So that's good. What have we done wrong there? Dogs, cats, rats. Flow.dogs, cats, rats. That's still setting flows.dogs every time. Good old copy and paste. So then what we're seeing in here is cats, rats, and dogs. So we now have a dynamic Mermaid chart that I can influence. And obviously this would be data-driven however you want to. I've just chosen a slider for ease of use. But yes, the idea now is that you can also use any Mermaid chart dynamically. And that syntax error you see is just because I've not put proper like backup just in case message payload doesn't exist. That is better handled if I was coding slowly and thinking more about what I'm actually building. But in the case of time, yes, we now have dynamic Mermaid, injection of Mermaid, and also Markdown supported, in addition to our data visualization work that we've shown you before. So the last demo that I'm wanting to show you today, and then we're going to go into a little bit more about future work and some of the Q&A. Hopefully I can see lots of questions coming in, so that's great, thank you. Is we're actually going to build in some custom components. So we have our template node, which was very popular in Dashboard 1. Unfortunately, we cannot support copy and paste straight out of a template node in Dashboard 1 straight into Dashboard 2, given that Dashboard 1 was Angular based and we are now Vue based. However, I did want to give you a couple of little insights into, if this is your first time working with Vue, for example, then what could you do to, what can I teach that's going to be really useful, basically. And everything is driven in a similar fashion in that it's a kind of mustache template. So if I was to inject just message.payload in here, for example, why something isn't happening? All right, let's just hope that's working. It's not. Why aren't you working? There we go, same thing. Don't know why that worked the second time around. So if I just put an inject for now, that's just going to be a raw timestamp. As I run that inject, that timestamp will just be displayed, because in my UI template, I've just said, just go and render message payload. If we want to build something a little bit more verbose, I mentioned earlier in the presentation, we also support all of the Vuetify components by default. So just to show you some of these, a lot of those we are also using ourselves in the underlying components like buttons and so on. But if we had an expansion panel, for example, it's not a node that we have. But if you wanted this, all you've got to do is copy and paste into a template node and hit done, deploy. And now I have a working accordion inside my UI template that's nicely formatted and so on. So any of these dozens and dozens of components that are working within Vuetify and running within Vuetify, we natively support in Dashboard 2. And a little bit more of a kind of, I guess, a useful demo with this is actually going to be around a progress bar. So down here somewhere, there is progress linear and progress circular. So if, for example, I take our progress linear and I put that into, where am I going to put that? I'm actually going to put that into a new template, just so it's a little bit easier to work with. And we're going to connect that up to a slider. So we're going to have our slider is going to live inside the video player group. That's going to connect up to our template, which is also in our video player group, which for some reason is not saving properly again. And what we're going to do here is, rather than having a hard-coded model value, which is the example that Vuetify have given here, we can actually do v-model equals value. And the reason that works is because our template node under the covers automatically just has this component of a value, which is essentially your message payload. So if I then wire those things up and now have a slider that only goes from 0 to 10, but the progress goes from 0 to 100. So let's make that 100. And now as I do this, we can see that my progress bar goes up with it. And again, obviously your progress bar could be linked to anything you'd like, but I've done a slider because it's quite a nice, easy, quick demo to show. And what we can also do is have, for example, a differently styled progress circular. And I'm going to copy and paste that, copy that again in our template node here. And the only thing that we have to change is that that is just v model equals value. And helps if I wire that up. So now when I use my slider, both the linear and the circular progress bar work nicely. And I think this even has the ability to put in a label. So the documentation for Vuetify is really good. all you have to put is the text inside here. So now render again. And then now as I'm sliding this, my value also displays inside. So just wanted to show you this because it gives you a lot of out of the box functionality, albeit you're using UI template. But if there's anything that we aren't natively supporting in a widget itself, then you've got here the freedom to do so. And then the last little bit that I wanted to show you is rather than just rendering static HTML, what we can also do is actually have events coming back into Node-RED. So if, for example, I wanted to, let's build a video player. And we're going to have just a standard HTML video. I'm actually going to use the Big Buck Bunny video because it's an open source one that is easy to the access. So if I add in a source, that video, it's type video MP4. And we, on the video itself, are just going to put some controls to start with. And let's make it width equals 100%. And make sure that's actually saved. It has. That's going into video player, done, deploy that. And for some reason, we're not getting into video player again. Video player, template examples. Why aren't you rendering? That's fun. What have I done wrong there? Source equals type equals video MP4. That's funny. I have a backup here just in case things did go badly. That is working on a different instance of Node-RED. So I'm just going to quickly jump ahead. Don't know what I typed differently. Feel like that's the same thing, but that's fine. And you're also going to now see a preview of what I'm going to actually add on. So I'm going to get rid of this stuff because I want to explain what I'm doing. And just deploy that out, quickly show you that we have a working video player, right? It's just a standard HTML video player with the video that I've linked to. Now, let's say that every time someone presses play or presses pause, or I'm building a component that requires me to know things about what that person is doing or interacting with in some way, we have built-in function called send within template that is allowing me to basically send information back. So I can say, and the view way of writing an event is at, and then the event name. On play, for example, I can send, and then in here is my message payload. So let's just call it event play. Hit done, hit deploy. Cancel that deploy because I'm also going to wire that up to a debug node so that I can actually see what's coming out. And we'll do complete object deploy. So then now if I hit play, we now get an event in here that says that that person has hit play, which is good fun, which is fine, but we might want a bit more information. We might want, for example, if they pause, where have they paused? So in here, we could also say, and this is a little neat view trick that, having spoken to the devs of Angular 1 in Dashboard 1, was a pain, is that you can do this thing called ref in Vue, which is the equivalent of giving it an ID, but it's automatically scoped to just your thing. So what this means that I can do is at pause, I can then say we're going to send another event, and the event this time is going to be pause. But I also want to give it some extra information. So let's just say the time. Vue gives you access to a thing called refs. Our ref is my video. So my video. And then JavaScript API for getting the current time in a video is just .current time. So now if we pause, what that will do is it will send another event through, but it would also tell us at what time that person paused. So if I deploy that and I play, so we're going to be at about 2 seconds. I've just paused. We got our initial play event. We've now been given a pause event, and we've also now got the timestamp for this. Now, the reason I wanted to show this particular demo is I can now just copy and paste that video and because it's using ref, I don't have to worry about custom IDs and all that kind of pain. I can hit play on this guy and run it to 2 seconds, pause it. I can hit play on this guy, run it for however many seconds, and pause it at 4. And those events and that data doesn't get polluted by the other video player. So I've got a 4-minute one there. I have my play object here. This one paused at 2 minutes, and this one had the play object again. And the idea is that, it makes it way easier to copy and paste your templates around in Dashboard 2. In Dashboard 1, that was very, very difficult. But yeah, that's a very, 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 very quick whistle-stop tour of some of the functionality that we're introducing into Dashboard 2. I could go on for hours showing the detail and kind of talking through a lot of the stuff that I went through. But I wanted to show off some of the shinier new stuff that we've got. And then we'll also address some of the questions, no doubt, that have come up in the Q&A session just after this. So to quickly show you where we're at. Well, I didn't want to start from the beginning. I wanted to go into presenter view. So to show you where we're at, and it's still going to start from beginning in terms of what future features and what we're working towards, which I will very quickly skip through because I've also got announcements that I need to cover. Where we would like to go for Dashboard 2 is interactive dashboards. Something that I had a really great conversation with David Zhang last week, who had kind of approached me on the forums. If anyone wants to approach me, you're more than welcome to approach me and ask questions in forums or however on Node-RED Slack, for example. And something that and it's a common pattern that we had seen in Dashboard 1 is that people were steering away from Chart.js. And the reason they were steering away from Chart.js is because they wanted to be able to interact, to zoom into data, be able to actually have interactive data visualizations. And so as a result, they were just using eCharts, which is a different JavaScript library inside a UI template node, which kind of felt like it defeated the point of Dashboard, which is meant to be low code. Easy things should be easy. And so something that we really want to make sure is that out of the box, these charts are zoomable, clickable, and interactive. And that's something that we'll be hoping to work towards in the very near future. A pain point that existed in Dashboard 1 and still currently exists in Dashboard 2 is onboarding when you first run a new instance of Dashboard 2. If you're new to Node-RED or if you're new to Dashboard, it is very unintuitive that you have to drop on a chart node, for example, and then suddenly you have to configure a group, a page, a UI, and a theme that all have defaults, but you just still have to just double click them and just click OK. And it just feels like a painful process. So something that we're working towards is having all of that kind of like default setup done for you the second you drop on your first node, and then also offering a few different themes out of the box as well. So we could, in theory, have a FlowFuse theme or a dark theme or a light theme or whatever, all of which now, by the way, you can change directly within Node-RED, the theming. So you get interactive box like this, and that makes it a lot easier to do rather than having to change settings, JS files and all that fun stuff. So yeah, just wanted to expose that one as well. Flexible layouts. This is like the golden nugget for Dashboard 2 that is going to be so much harder than it should be, but it's something we want to work towards, is the ability client side in your dashboard to be able to resize widgets and drag and drop and move them around, rather than having to go through, as you currently do, that, as you saw me, with the size widget inside the Node-RED editor, or readjusting the layout in the Dashboard 2 sidebar. I have ideas on how we can do this, and I've spoken heavily with Nick and DCJ on this as well, but it is something we really want to achieve. And the advantage of how we built Dashboard 2 is that this would just be one of many different types of layouts. If you don't want to do this and you just need something really quick and dirty, you can still use the grid layout. You can still use the fixed layout. So you don't need to use it, but hopefully it will be an option in the future. More diverse data visualizations, heat maps, gauges. We're looking at other things like UI SVG may even become part of core, because that was very popular in Dashboard 1. And obviously the idea of like donut charts and pie charts and that kind of stuff as well. And then finally, our main drive is easy things should be easy. And so we do want more low code control. Now, what I mean by that is what we've done with UI chart, where you can just define the key of your data. You don't have to do data manipulation. You don't have to know JavaScript. You just drop your data in, wire it to a chart, and plot it. We've still got work to backfill UI control. We're also looking at the opposite of UI control, which is UI events, which is as things are happening in dashboard, that triggers stuff back into your Node-RED editor. So for example, on page load, it would send an event. If someone does a button click, you'd get a specific event type data structure, and maybe even supplementing that with user data. There's a lot of activity going on in GitHub around that right now. But yeah, that's something that we're looking at. And now finally, 2 announcements, because I wanted to leave 15 minutes for Q&A, is that we are no longer at FlowForge Node-RED dashboard as of about an hour ago. So going forward, we are at FlowFuse /Node-RED dashboard. So the company underwent a rebrand a little while ago. We've been holding off NPM package renaming for some time, just because there are things that could go wrong, but we're fairly sure we're all okay. Now, at FlowForge, Node-RED dashboard is still available, and it will stay available on the palette editor for a little while at version 0.7, which I released yesterday. FlowFuse /Node-RED dashboard is already on 0.7.1, and there will be a 0.7.2 going out tomorrow. And so yeah, just wanted to make you guys aware of that, that for a little while there will be 2 entries when you search for Node-RED dashboard in addition to the original Node-RED dashboard. And then the last announcement is that we are officially saying that dashboard 2 is in beta. For a long period of time, I say for a long period of time, we only started this project 2.5 months ago, but 2.5 months ago, we said this was in pre-alpha, right? We're still a lot of testing and a lot of instability at that particular time. We are actively using like dashboard 2 within FlowFuse ourselves. And whilst we are aware it's absolutely not feature complete, it's never going to be feature complete. And there is still a bit of migration work to be done. We did want to acknowledge that we are now saying that dashboard 2 is in beta, and we do encourage use of it. And I could go into more detail on that, but I'm also conscious of time, and I want to make sure that I've answered questions that have come up. So I'm going to hand over to Ian, who's going to tell me what questions I need to answer.
Okay, and Joe, get a drink, take a pause. Great presentation, great demo. So, yeah. So please, we've got already lots of questions in the Q&A. Hopefully, we'll have time to get through them all. Feel free to add more at the end. There has been a couple of questions about making your flows available that you did today. I'm sure you will make them available. The other thing, I put a link in the chat. If people want links to kind of GitHub repos, all the documentation, it's at dashboard.flowfuse.com. Right?
That's correct. Yeah. So I will actually quickly pull that up. So I can see one of the questions there around any bugs or any of that kind of stuff. So yeah, dashboard.flowfuse.com. I also apologize for speaking so fast in that last 10 minutes, but I wanted to make sure I got content in.
Okay.
So dashboard.flowfuse.com will give you docs. Any issues, please, on the GitHub repository.
Yeah. So there was a question about bugs and tweaks. So I think the preferred. I just want to check with you.
Bugs, tweaks, feature requests, anything. If there's anything on dashboard 2 you would like to change, add it as an issue, and we can have a great chat.
Yeah. So individual issues for each bug, not one massive issue.
Yes, please.
Right? Individual issues for each bug. Okay. So Ben Orchard, I hope that answers your question. So let's we'll take a question from Paul Reed. Chart.js was great for starters. Are there any intention of making it more formatting options like line thickness, line style, point size, etc.?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think actually, Paul, I think you and I may have interacted a little bit on the forum. And I think you were the one that proposed a really nice idea, which is maybe even exposing the ability to actually put in a full-blown Chart.js definition. So at the moment, we try and make it low code, right? So the idea is that you can say, I want, this data point. We don't do a lot of customization other than line colors right now. But there is so much customization available in Chart.js that we don't really want to overwhelm it with lots of options, but the ability to maybe expose the actual underlying config for advanced users would potentially be a route to go down.
Okay, Paul, I opened your mic, so if you have a follow-up question, feel free. But you don't have to. So, do you have a follow-up question, Paul?
No, it's fine.
Okay, great. Thank you for your question. So we'll go on to the next question from Menjuta. I have a custom template node that plots a chart based on Apex. Can that be converted to dashboard too?
Yeah, so it wouldn't be it would be unlikely to be a direct copy and paste job. And currently it is worth calling out, we are missing a core piece of functionality on our template node, which is the ability to inject custom JavaScript files. So for example, if you had Apex as a dependency right now, we can't inject that on head. That's like my next major priority. The second this webinar finishes, is to get that working, because we actually have it working under the covers. I just haven't exposed the options in the Node-RED editor. So yes, it would be possible. It wouldn't work copy and paste, but it should hopefully be fairly minimal effort to make it work.
Okay. Juneth, is that, do you have any follow-up question? I apologize, I'm probably not saying your name correctly. But do you have any follow-up questions? You have to come off mute too.
No, it's fine. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. We'll go on to the next one. In terms of migration roadmap, any estimates on when the UI template node will support custom style script tags?
So
Joe,
custom style is already supported.
Okay.
Custom script just mentioned is like my number one big priority. The other thing actually I will also mention is on our GitHub. If anyone wants to know what I'm actively working on, we have a project tab on our GitHub repository, which is here, and will tell you exactly what I am currently working on and what I plan on working on next as well. And if there's any opinions as to you don't agree with and you think something should be in up next, please do shout and comment on that particular issue, because I do pay attention to that. So yeah, the next thing is supporting style and script injections for UI template. It's absolutely a priority and something we're aware that we're short on at the moment.
Okay. Another question from Omri. In dashboard 1, I'm using UI template nodes for advanced multi-user input forms. The UI template node in dashboard 2 does not seem to work yet. Is there any expected due date?
So we should be supporting custom forms.
Maybe
that one, Omri, if you don't mind, could you open up an issue on GitHub? And I will be really interested to dive into the specific type of user you've got there. So my colleague Steve...
I will do that on GitHub, but just wanted to focus my question. I'm talking about things that are not supported in the UI form. If I do some other stuff with the JavaScript, right now I'm not able to connect it within my dashboard to
because we don't have the JavaScript injection stuff.
Okay, understood. Okay,
yeah.
I'll be patient. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for your question. So, question from Jerome. Any news about the possibility to manage DB nodes in a more dynamic way? Use them in a subflow for faster deployment, dynamic assignment to groups, etc.
Yeah, so so my colleague Steve is regularly reminding me that dashboard doesn't work in subflows, and it's something that we have ideas on. It's actually quite complicated because of how we're binding groups and stuff to a UI config node. If you put that inside a subflow and then you copy that subflow, at the moment, the properties inside a subflow, for example, that group isn't configurable at the subflow level. So there are actually underlying Node-RED changes that Nick and Steve and I are meeting up in person next week to discuss. How can we actually facilitate that within Node-RED itself? Like, for example, could you, within a subflow, say, I want this property to be dynamic per subflow instance? And then at the subflow level, you could have a side menu that says, this now is at this group, or this has this particular label, and that automatically then would kind of push down to underlying nodes within that instance of the subflow. So yeah, it is something that we are actively discussing, but is annoyingly harder than it should be.
All right. So a question from Bertie. Are there any plans on making the whole dashboard tabs or groups reusable? We have to have multiple tabs with very little changes between them, and currently using something like subflows to make them portable. If we change
so in addition to the subflows option, something that we have discussed is that at the moment for a group, for example, when you pick the page that group belongs to, it's a single drop down. Something we've discussed is the ability that we might want to have a multi-select option there. So I could say a single group belongs to multiple pages, or a single widget belongs to multiple groups, and that would then consequently actually render in multiple places. That's like the first. That's a iteration towards ideally subflows, because subflows, I think, if we can build that properly, as I mentioned, with the kind of the nesting of properties and that being surfaced up at the subflow level, that I think would be a really, really powerful tool in Node-RED generally, not even just in dashboard. So yeah, that would be my annoyingly vague answer to that one.
Yeah. Birdie, do you have a follow? Actually, I know you had another question about enabling disabled tabs and groups programmatically too. So did that answer your question?
I can answer the follow-up question as well if you want me to answer that follow-up.
Why don't you do that right now, Joe?
Yeah, of course. So UI control in dashboard 1 is how you would normally do that. So for example, I would say disable this particular widget, disable this particular group. We haven't currently got that fully supported. And so that is definitely a priority that we want to be working on. With regards to authentication, that's something that my colleague Ben is currently looking at, is how do we expose if, for example, you're running on FlowFuse and you are logged in on FlowFuse using a dashboard, how can Node-RED side, we know within the editor flow which user is doing particular actions? There's some complexities around that because we're using Socket.io for communications. Authentication is done by HTTP server. They don't completely talk to each other that well. We started investigating that in detail, I think it was like last Wednesday. So it's something we're definitely working on. Because the idea then would be that if someone's done a page view and it's user A, for example, you could then send an event to a UI control node that said, show this tab, hide this tab, and so on. So then you've got user dependent functionality.
Where do you have any follow-up?
For the second question, thanks a lot. I think that clears it up for me. And for the first question, I just want to give a bit context because we use different tabs, but they show the same thing just from a different data source. And currently we have to duplicate the tab in Node-RED. They have separate configuration nodes, everything is separate. But yeah, I was wondering if there would be an option to say, okay, this group is now kind of modular, and I can copy the entire group without having to go into the details in every single node.
That, I think, with the idea that Steve, Nick, and myself have got around what subflows could become. So, for example, the input to a subflow could be your data source. And if your subflow was then your group of widgets, you could copy and paste that subflow around as much as you like, and you just inject a different data source each time. Yet you'd only have to have defined the overall layout and configuration the once within that subflow. So that's, for me, is the most exciting idea that I think we've got in terms of reusability. And yeah, hopefully it's not going to be an easy task, but it's something that we're definitely looking at. Okay, in that case, it exactly sounds what I'm looking for. That's great to hear.
Excellent. Moving on, from Ben Orchard, is there a roadmap timeline to address that Dash is still a single user and single page app?
Yeah, really good question. It's definitely on a horizon. I actually have a call with a customer tomorrow morning who's asked for also this exact thing. And it's something that we are trying to work out how we actually build that architecturally, because Dashboard 2 has been very, very heavily inspired by Dashboard 1 in terms of its server-side architecture, because we wanted it to be backward compatible, like not backward compatible, but behaving the same way as much as possible. There are some fundamental changes that need to happen if we want to be, for example, user by user dependent and client side only. I've started to steer us in that direction, but it's difficult for me to say a timeline on it, just because it's dependent upon a few other little bits and pieces that we're working on. Right now, it's just me about 3 days a week working on Dashboard 2. So if there are any, actually, there's something I haven't said. If there's any Vue.js developers out there that would like to contribute to Dashboard 2, please do so. And feel free to comment on an issue if you think you can contribute it and help in any way, because all help is absolutely welcome. This is, like I say, it is an open source project, and we want to encourage that.
Yeah. Ben, did that answer your question? I think it was pretty straightforward, but I've opened your mic if you... No? Okay. So I think, Joe, are you okay to go for another... We're at the top of the hour.
That's fine. Yeah, there doesn't seem to be too many questions. I say it as there are more questions coming, but we can go for another few questions. That's fine.
Yeah. Let's do 5 more minutes, and then we'll figure out how we can answer the questions we don't get to. We'll try and figure out how to answer them in the forums. So
and actually, something I will say is when we put out so on our website, you can go to resources webinars, and you can actually watch back this webinar once it's available online. I will also, in that same webinar page, put all of the existing flows that I built today. So we can push that out onto socials and whatever else. And I will also put them up onto flows.node-red.org as well.
Yeah. And so it's going on to, I think you answered the question, is there an opening with V2 to placing widgets and within subjects?
Yeah, I think we've covered that. Yeah,
we've done that one. I assume dashboard 2 will only work with Node-RED 3.x or higher.
That's a good question that I actually don't know the answer to.
I guess you're only testing right now with Node.
Yeah, I'm only working on dashboard with Node-RED 3. I can't think of anything that's Node-RED 3 specific that I'm doing, but I don't want to make assurances. So yeah, I don't want to give an answer on that because I don't actually know.
Okay. Coexistence with dashboard 1. Can you?
Yes, you can run both at the same time.
Perfect. These are quick ones. Is it possible to write JavaScript in a UI template node? Is that on the
it's definitely on the right map. That's the one we kind of covered earlier, the idea of being able to have your own custom script. And yeah, it's definitely on my probably top of my to-do list.
Okay. Just authentication, access control.
So we have it's not single user in that it's single user in that there is a single source of truth for a dashboard 2, which it stores itself Node-RED side. So for example, if myself and Ian both log into the same dashboard and Ian makes some changes, I will automatically see those changes as well. So it's single source of truth. However, if you're running on FlowFuse, for example, you can actually configure all dashboard endpoints to be behind user authentication, which can be your FlowFuse user account, or your SSO account if you're using SSO on FlowFuse. So yes, it is single source of truth right now, albeit that's something we might look at changing in the future. But the authentication is already user by user if you're running through something like FlowFuse.
Yeah, and the next question was about any authentication systems. So FlowFuse actually has other.
Yes, so with FlowFuse, you can already do something that isn't basic HTTP.
We've got another multi-user question, so I think we've answered that one. How can I move from FlowForge Node-RED dashboard to FlowFuse Node-RED dashboard?
That is a really good question, Colin. Given that only happened an hour ago, I haven't actually fully tested that myself. In theory, he says with mostly confidence, in theory, it should be a matter of uninstalling FlowForge / Node-RED dashboard, installing FlowFuse Node-RED dashboard, and then all of your nodes should automatically just remap themselves because there's nothing in the node name that is specific to FlowForge. So, but I haven't had a chance to test that because that literally went live about 10 minutes before the webinar started. So that is a really good question. Thank you.
Okay, we'll take two more. So what priority is there to develop dashboard 1 UI control node capability, specifically hide show groups?
Yep, it is. Where is that? It's up next. There we go. On my screen share, if you're watching, I've just moved UI control into an up next. It should have already been in an up next, but it is definitely one of our top priorities, yes.
So key message here, if you want to know kind of what Joe is working on, it's all on this dashboard in GitHub, right? So it's a very transparent project. How is it possible to use dashboard 1 and 2 together in the same project?
It is absolutely possible. If you have them installed together, they won't clash. So dashboard 2 by default runs at /dashboard. Dashboard 1 runs at /UI. All of the widgets, we have got slightly different colored widgets. They are similar still because we didn't want to go completely against it. But the idea is you should still be able to tell a little bit. But yeah, functionality wise, there shouldn't be any crossover and clashing. We are using slightly different methodologies behind the scenes, so it should be fine.
we'll take just this last one. It's about migrating from dashboard 1 to dashboard 2.
Really good question that I forgot to address.
You touched upon a bit of migration, but do you want to just kind of...
Yeah, so I published this yesterday. So we now have a formal migration guide that still needs improving and it still needs a little bit more detail. But I have listed all of the existing dashboard 1 nodes, for example, UI button, and then all of the properties within that and what changes we have made to those properties. Now, currently, it is a manual process, annoyingly. You would have to drop on UI button and copy and paste manually all over your settings. Something that is on my to-do list, amongst many other things, is that I would like to write a script that would automate that process. Now, when I say automate that process, I don't mean fully migrate your entire flow over, because that's going to be very, very difficult if you've got custom UI templates and all that kind of stuff. But for something like a UI button, where we support most of the things already, and we will be supporting them. It's not that we will support these things. It's just a matter of time. Then it should be fairly straightforward. But yes, that's something that we are aware of.
Okay, so I think we'll call it a day. There's 10 more questions. I just quickly scanned through them. Some of them are asking kind of when Gauge and stuff that's coming up. So again, go to the GitHub project, the dashboard there. It's laid out. Joe's plans are all laid out there. If you don't see anything, something that you're interested in coming, open an issue. Joe will respond it to there, right? So I think that's a better way to interact with the project is through the GitHub issues on kind of status type questions like that. We will try and go through all the remaining questions, and if the information's out there on GitHub, we probably won't answer them. If they're not there, we'll answer them in the UI, the dashboard forum. We'll try and get an answer posted over the next couple of days to outstanding questions. All right, Joe, any last remarks?
The only one I do want to answer, because I've also seen this come up on the forums, is about the idea of like for each topic, so dynamically creating gauges and that kind of stuff. So at the moment, a way of doing that would be a UI template node. However, I know that there has been some great work. I think it's in UI Builder, but I might be quoting the wrong project, that have done this natively within the project. It's something that Thorsten and I'm hoping I can reach out to him if he's on this call. Please say hi. Yeah, I'm curious to understand that in more detail, because I know that that's a really, really popular feature, but it's not something that's ever been done in Dashboard. So I haven't even got a GitHub issue open for that. So Dustin, if you don't mind, and opening up a GitHub issue, and I'm happy to have a chat and work out what we could do there.
Okay. Joe, amazing stuff, amazing project. You've made a great progress on this. And I think it's incredibly important for the Node-RED community to have Dashboard 2.0 out there. I think the response we're getting there's definitely lots of interest. We definitely could use more help from people on it. So if you're interested, certainly reach out to Joe in the community forums and volunteer to help out with the project. But again, Joe, thank you very much for the presentation. It's a great presentation, great demos. And thank you everyone for joining us. We'll, as I say, everyone will receive an email tomorrow with a link to the YouTube page with the recording of this webinar. Okay, everyone have a great rest of the day. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.